everyone, it's Charlene with Tranquil Tuesdays, and today I'm going to talk about pu'er tea. I haven't talked about pu'er tea once yet, and it is definitely one of China's and Chinese tea's most distinctive teas. And I think it's a tea that has a lot of mystique and misinformation surrounding it, so I knew that when I talked about pu'er tea that I was going to have to make like 4 videos, and which I'm going to. But this is the first one. This is just the overview and introduction to pu'er tea. Welcome. And I'm going to start out by brewing some pu'er tea. So I'm using an Yixing Teapot here. This is actually my paternal grandfather's old Yixing Teapot. And I'm using boiling water. I'm going to heat up everything like we've been doing in all our videos to just, you know, warm up all the ingredients or all the implements, get them ready for peak performance. Should use less water. Okay. Heat up the cup. So the first thing I want to talk about is how pu'er is its own category of tea. And not just in Chinese tea, but in all teas, it has its own category. So the main categories of tea, I would say there's 5 to 6, it depends who you ask, main categories. It is white tea, green tea, oolong tea, black tea, which in Chinese is red tea, pu'er, and then there's yellow tea, which is pretty rare, and then even more rare is a category called dark tea. So these are the 7 main categories of tea, but for all intents and purposes, there's really 5 main ones. So pu'er is its own category. And that's because it has a very distinct way of being made, and it is one of the teas, as a category, it has a protected identity. So we're going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to first, let's just make our first brew. Here, this is 150 milliliters of water capacity. Here is my pu'er tea. You might be like, huh, that is loose leaf tea. I was expecting a brick. I'll talk about that on a future video. But this is pu'er tea. And one of the characteristics of a high quality pu'er tea is it would have big, broad leaves reflecting the ancient wild trees and the distinctive varietal of tea. Remember we talked about tea cultivars and varietals in a video a few weeks back. I used about a tablespoon. And pu'er tea is made with the varietal Camellia sinensis assamica, which is different than most of the other Chinese teas, which are Camellia sinensis. So, put in a tablespoon, and I'm going to use boiling water. Pu'er is one of the teas that you really want it very hot. And I'm going to brew it for about 30 seconds. Pu'er is a tea that can also be oversteeped. It can get astringent if it's oversteeped. And we talked about that in the video about black tea and milk. And since we're using really hot water, the time window is a lot shorter. So I'm going to try to monitor this so it's not too long in terms of oversteeping or steeping. Pu'er is known for having a very distinctive flavor palette, and I think it's about time. Ooh, you can smell it. It smells sort of like smoky, woodsy, and these are the all natural flavors. There's no added flavors. I think that's another reason why pu'er tea is so special. It has such a distinct and unique flavor profile amongst Chinese teas. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, so you see the color, and you might be kind of surprised by how light this color is compared to many pu'er teas. The liqueur, which is the liquid that's poured out after you brew it, is almost like a dark, milky soil color, and this one isn't. Ooh, yeah. It's that distinctive, like, almost mushroomy, woodsy, leathery, smoky flavor of pu'er that people love. I mean, the people who love pu'er, they're almost their own subcategory of tea enthusiasts. Sort of like how single malt whiskey drinkers are kind of their own subculture of spirit appreciators. There's definitely a subculture of pu'er lovers because it is such a unique tea. Yeah, like almost mushroomy. Okay, so I talked about how its own category. I talked briefly about the fact that it has a protected identity. So sort of like champagne and French wines, right? There is a region in southwest China, in Yunnan province, in the Xishuangbanna trading area or growing area, that is designated that pu'er, in order to be called pu'er tea, the leaves must be grown there and produced there. The name pu'er comes from the name of the trading town in Yunnan called Pu'er, but the leaves are not actually grown there. The leaves are grown in Xishuangbanna in the mountains or the countryside, and Pu'er is just the name of the trading town. There's a very long, fascinating history about trading pu'er tea along the tea horse caravan road, which is something I'll talk about more in depth in a future video. So there's the protected identity, there's a distinctive flavor, and I think another element that gives pu'er tea a lot of its mystique and allure is the purported health benefits that have been associated with pu'er tea. The fact that a lot of the trees that are grown in Xishuangbanna are ancient wild trees that have been growing there for like hundreds of years. I mean, I've been to a forest area in the tea growing region of Xishuangbanna, and you just walk amongst ancient trees that have been there for hundreds of years, that where the leaves are what are making the tea. And I think the last thing that's kind of given pu'er tea a certain notoriety is that in the last 15 years or so in China, there grew to be this very heated market around buying pu'er tea, and it became incredibly valuable and expensive and coveted, to the point where people were trading pu'er like they were trading futures. And there was this, it was almost like a real estate bubble where pu'er, certain lots and certain discs of pu'er tea were going for hundreds of thousands up to millions of dollars. So when you see that kind of money being thrown to specific tea, it's like, what's going on? But what is this crazy special tea? And I think that money market that surrounded it is a completely more of an economic phenomenon than necessarily indication of the true value of pu'er tea, but it definitely created a lot of mystique and excitement around it. And that also created a market for a lot of misinformation and unscrupulous traders. So the three main misconceptions that I'm going to address in this series about pu'er tea is, one, the idea that older is better. That is not necessarily true, and we're going to talk about that in depth next week. The second misconception is confusion around this idea of fermentation versus aging. Both can happen in a pu'er tea, but not necessarily. One could happen and not the other. We'll go into it. It's very confusing. And then the third thing is, I think there's a misconception about what pu'er tea looks like. So for instance, like I said, I'm brewing a loose leaf tea. I didn't break it off a disc. The liqueur looks very light, and it's because I'm brewing a sheng pu'er, which is a raw pu'er, as opposed to the most commercially available and probably most recognizable form of pu'er, which are the discs or the bricks, which are show pu'er, which is cooked pu'er. So I'm going to go into a lot more about those distinctions in a future video. So I hope this whetted your appetite to learn a lot more about pu'er tea. We will talk about that in the next 3 videos. And in the meantime, I look forward to drinking this and sharing with you.